We'll call the meeting of the Public Protection and Judiciary Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Bob Fiedler,
Excused.
Paul Adams,
Present.
Mark Carlson,
Excused, unless he comes later.
Kathy Leaf,
Present.
Tim Ramberg.
Present.
Approval of the minutes. Any additions or corrections to the April 3rd, 2025 minutes? Seeing none, they'll be approved as read. Anyone from the public here to make comment? Public comment? Public comment? All right, we'll move to business. Financial report, please.
The financial report in your packet is through March. So one of the things that I'll probably keep a closer eye on this year is with the clerk of court's budget, just because she was over by so much on some of the items. So if we want to track the legal services, court appointed, and interpreter services. So you can see, like interpreter services, where we're budgeted at 25,000, and through the first quarter of the year, she's just under 10,000. So again, that's a line item that's probably going to be running over. So those are a recurring issue that we're going to need to try to address in the 2026 budget. Other than that, I don't think I had anything specific to point out. Are there any questions on anything that you saw in the financials?
I don't think there's much we can do about interpreter services. So I think that's just, it is what it is.
Correct. Yeah, at some point, you're subject to the minimum requirements in order to perform the job. So we're going to have to provide that service level that's necessary in order to provide the services that we're required to provide. So.
Any questions for Ken? Okay, we'll move on to consideration of establishing cremation burial transit fee for the medical examiner's office. You're on, Mr. Witt.
Yeah, Tina had a pre-scheduled conflict with this meeting, but she'll make sure her first Tuesdays are clear from this point going forward. So this came up actually during the committee of the whole meeting. We'd kind of talked about that. The prior medical examiner was not charging a fee if a body was brought across the state line into St. Croix County for cremation. Although the medical examiner where the body is cremated still has to sign off on that cremation certificate. So right now we charge $164.38. That's our fee for a cremation certificate in St. Croix County. When I was talking this over with Tina, the prior medical examiner didn't want to be double charging people. And Tina doesn't really want to double charge people either. But the fee in Minnesota is only $50. So they've paid a $50 fee across the river. So I said, well, what if we just create the transit fee and charge the difference then, the extra $114.38? So she was agreeable to that. And I think it's a nice compromise. She's done 20 of them in her first month. So that would be $2,000 a month. That'd be about $25,000 a year in potential revenues that we could be able to recoup. And the medical examiner does have to still do a records review. I mean, they're not doing a full medical exam of the bodies before they're cremated, but they are doing a records review. So it does take time to go through that. So I think the fee is still appropriate. And probably the reduced fee is probably the right way to go. So anyways, those are the details on it.
I think it's fair. Somebody want to make a motion?
I got to make a motion to establish a cremation burial transit fee for the medical examiner's office in the amount of $114.38.
And I will second that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item of business is the Sheriff's Office Field Services Quarterly Statistics, first quarter 2025. Sheriff.
Good morning, thank you. We added our quarterly stats, January, February, March, just to kind of give you a high-level snapshot of activity going on down at the Sheriff's Office. Calls for service, pretty consistent. I think we had about 25,000 last year, so we're kind of right on schedule there. I want to talk about, we always talk about emergency detentions. I want to highlight one that isn't on this list. It happened right after it, but we had a 25-hour emergency detention the first 2 weeks of April. Came in at 1 p.m., decided for an emergency detention at 3:35. He was medically clear at 5:30 and not accepted for us to take off to Winnebago till 2 a.m. Only to continue to keep putting it on your radar, the public's radar, that the system still needs help. We need help in this region, and it is using up a lot of resources, a lot of time, and a lot more, as we continue to say, pressure and anxiety to that person that we are trying to get resources to. So we keep hitting that hurdle and that bump. One of the other, with the dispatch and the calls for service, we had a grass fire the other day on the 18th. That was over by exit 1 on Highway 64. And in, was it 18 minutes, Terry? 19 minutes, they had 79 calls on that grass fire. So you have your 3 or 4 dispatchers in there, not only trying to get the fire departments out there, but also answering 79 calls. Some of those transferred over from Minnesota, so there's a whole lot of resources there. So the dispatchers are absolutely spinning a lot of plates, from quiet, mundane to right out of their seats and buried. So they do a wonderful job down there. Dispatch, Emergency Communications Week was recent. Our thanks to all of them. Next week is Corrections Week. Our great thanks to the corrections officers. This past weekend we had a suicide attempt that if not for the wonderful work of the staff, it would have ended much differently. They brought that guy back through CPR. He's now back in jail. So our thanks to them as well. They do a wonderful job, again, from a mundane to something on the brink of tragedy. But they did an amazing job. So that was Sunday morning. And then Saturday night, we had a critical call in the county as well with a physical domestic, fled out the back door with a gun. So they did that was an hours-long event utilizing new technology of drones and old technology with a canine. And that gentleman was taken into custody with minimal injuries, but the gun was found by him or next to him out in the field. So another dash back to reality of the complexity and the dangerousness that inside and outside the walls these individuals are doing. So a lot of good work that I wanted to share. And then on Monday, we had our drug take-back day. Actually, this weekend, we had the drug take-back day, and Monday, we took the unwanted drugs to Eau Claire, and that was a total of 480 pounds out of St. Croix County. Hudson had the high winner. They had collected over 6 months, 192 pounds. And then throughout, I think our sheriff's office lobby had 85 pounds. That's done twice a year. The next roundup of unused medications will be in October. So.
Thank you to you and your team. And my question about dispatchers, are we fully staffed in dispatch? Okay,
We are.
but they're still spinning a lot of
Here's
plates.
another one. Yes.
Did the canine assist in that capture of the individual
The canine was integral in safely being taken into custody for the officers. Yes, he was apprehended by the canine.
And then what agency supplied that canine?
That was ours, St. Croix County.
Okay. And then are you looking for a captain in the jails? Have you got a posting out for that?
Yes, we do have a posting out. Captain Anderson, after 29 and a half years, has decided to wheel into the retirement phase of her life. We will recognize her at the June meeting. And yes, her, Chief Deputy Standard, and myself all started on the same day, January 1st, 1996. So Brent outlasted her. But she's done a wonderful job. So yes, we are posting for a jail captain. Bridget Mace, a sergeant in the jail, will be going to recruit school. So we also have posted for a sergeant position. So.
Any other questions? Thank you. Oh, I did have one other question. So the domestics, it seems, and maybe it just was that 1 week, but they were like 3 or 4 in 1 week. I mean, are we seeing more and more of that happening?
I don't have the numbers, but anecdotally, I believe it seems like it. Physical domestics, several times they're gone from the scene. We've got to attempt to locate, so we're reaching out to other agencies. There's always that concern of, their return, trying to find them. So, yeah, it seems like domestics they ebb and flow, but we've had some serious ones again. But we're coming off of 3 homicides as well that all have a intimate partner relationship this year.
Right,
So that doesn't help,
right.
tragically.
Thanks for the report. And again, thank you to all of you for all the work you do. The Sheriff's Office Long Range Communications Plan. Good morning, Terry.
So as we looked, and Terry's kind of the mind behind much of our communications. Moving forward, we look into the future, and radio technology changes, other counties' technologies, our communication and ability to connect with different entities, as well as infrastructure, towers, new capabilities. And we've been running on this system for some time. So Terry and Captain Tim Kufis were asked to try to coordinate, capture as much information, and come up with something that's going to sustain this region for years to come. So I'm going to turn it over to Terry and his masterful knowledge of this topic.
Terry's big brain.
We began the long-range plan. We evaluated where we came from, where we are, and where we need to be, and all of the things that are involved in the future, where we need to be. So for those of you that don't remember, we went live on the current system back in 2017. We came from a 5-tower communication system that we enhanced for 2017 to be 14 sites. And we added one channel we added and made one of the existing channels a digital channel. That in turn, as well, all of them became simulcast repeated channels, which was not existing in the prior system. So when I say a simulcast system, I can stand in the basement in this building in my office and communicate on a portable to somebody in Glenwood in a building down there, clear as can be. So there's needs or there's ask out there from all the end users that are out there. In 2017, there were approximately 1,100 radios on the system. Recently, we did a survey and we are just tipping the point of 2000. We're in the 1900s for mobiles and portables in the system currently after we did a survey. So there's been an increase in radios for the end users, for their safety, and with all the technology that they have these days. So in our looks at what is available out there, we have our current system. In 2027, we had to look at a KIP item for the Hammond Tower. Our lease is ending in 2030, in January of 2030. So we had to look at what are we going to do there. So there currently was a KIP item for $2 million, just in case we needed to rebuild a tower around the Hammond area to take care of that municipality and that geographical area. And then again in 2029, there was a $2.75 million KIP item to take and just refresh what we currently have. So that was $4.75 million by the end of 2029 that we were going to be investing in our system. So when looking at that, and then taking into the ask that we're hearing from the end users, we sent a survey out and asked them, what are things that you want? We got back very profoundly from the fire and EMS folks that they would like an additional channel or two for them to do their tactical operations when they're fighting fires or have a larger incident that requires a lot of discussion. They didn't want to tie up the main channel that we use for fire and EMS, but they wanted it recorded as well. So there's an ask there to have additional channels. The law enforcement as well wanted a possibility of having additional channels with technology, as Sheriff Knutson indicated, about drones. The negotiators, when they're involved in an incident where the team, the ERU is involved, there's a lot of moving pieces and puzzles. And, you know, safely should they all be on one channel communicating with one another. You know, ideally it'd be nice to separate them so the channel's quiet in case things go sideways for them. So there's a need there as well. There's also a need for encryption from the law enforcement side when they get into these tactical operational scenarios where they need to, I'm not going to say need to hide their communications, but for safety purposes, there's some people out there in the social media world that share everything that we say on the radio. So for their safety, it's probably better if we try to encrypt some certain situations for the safety of those involved. So in looking at that, we came upon looking at different scenarios for the future. One of them is being where we do nothing more other than refresh what we have. That doesn't address any of the asks that are out there by the end users. We looked at adding one additional channel, a simulcast channel, with encryption. That alone was approximately $2 million just to do that, approximately. We looked at Motorola's version of a system where they monitor the shell. They take the brains of the radio network for our system and they manage it. They call it WIPSN, W-I-P-S-N. It's a Wisconsin Public Safety Network is the acronym that they have. That's Motorola's version of a statewide radio system. Wiscom, the state of Wisconsin, has a Wiscom statewide system that they use for interoperability. There are several municipalities that are day-to-day users. They are currently rolling out Wiscom 2.0, they're calling it. They're enhancing it from where they are to an 800 megahertz system. And again, they're building it out. Getting to our side of the state is going to be approximately 2028, where they're enhancing the system on this side of the state. And again, they are only doing the day-to-day users and then the interoperability, which is us currently. We asked them if they'd be interested in making us a day-to-day user around that time, and they went silent. So we're kind of at a standstill with that one. Armor. The state of Minnesota has an Armor statewide system, very robust. It's an 800 megahertz system. We looked at if there's a possibility, right now, we have interoperability agreements. We're looking at enhancing our interoperability agreement with the state of Minnesota. So we're looked at that as well. They are currently looking at updating their system, going to the generation 2 of their statewide system, which is lots of dollars as well. And then we looked at independently for our needs at the county after looking at everything. The last option was creating our own 800 megahertz system, transitioning to a different band. In doing so, it enhances the in-building penetration, communication-wise. We're hearing with the new structures, kind of like this one, all the added wrapping on the HVAC, all the additional wiring for internet throughout the building. It's hindering the communications that we have. So one of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Enhancements of changing to an 800 megahertz system that we can penetrate buildings better. In doing so, there's less interference from adding other frequencies. Right now in our system, if we were to add a VHF frequency, imagine a pipe 6 inches. When we transmit at the end of the antenna on the tip, we're pushing out 6 inches worth of volume in the pipe, water flow, think of it that way. But if we add more frequencies, we have to add more filtering that rejects other channels or allows certain ones through, and that pipe continues to get smaller. So instead of having a output of at, say, 80 watts with all the additional filtering, it changes it down to 60 watts. So we're restricting what the power is at our antennas with more filtering. The 800 system has a lot less filtering needed. The frequencies, more frequencies are available out there, so we can add more frequencies as the county continues to grow. The population forecast in the county is projected, right now it's at around 95, 96,000 people. By the year 2040, it's projected to be around 120,000 people. The call volume since 2017 has increased. The intensity of the calls has increased. The technology that they're using out there has increased. There's a lot more need for them to communicate on the ground, whether it's law enforcement, fire, or EMS. There's a lot more needs or wants for them out there. So overall, looking at it, when we started looking at our numbers, we were going to be spending 4.75, and that wasn't doing anything other than refreshing what we have. If we were to add, to make 6.5 million, we'd add one channel and encryption. And I'll add as well, we're working with the highway department, considering them as well, because they have a few asks in there as well on the outer periphery of the county. They're not receiving, they have one transmit tower in the middle of the county. So they're, at times, they cannot receive when they're in the trucks. So we're looking at enhancing them, bringing them along in this transition to this 800 megahertz concept. But spending 6.5 million, or asking for that, I should say, it was not getting as much as we needed. And we still have to build a tower in Hammond. So there's a KIP ask for 2027 that the board will see this year for 11.6 million is what we're asking for, and that's for enhancing the system, converting it to a 800 megahertz band. That includes as well building a tower at Hammond, rebuilding a tower. We've had some discussions with St. Croix Electric regarding that. We've done some studies for coverage. There's as well a need for an additional tower on the east end of the county, right around exit Highway 128, at exit 28 and 994. We reached out to the highway department and spoke to Robbie, and we think we have a good location at one of his properties, the county properties down there. And there's also considerations for the northeast corner of the county. We have a little weakness up there. We're considering our options there. And then down to the southwest corner between River Falls and Hudson, when you get out towards the river, there's some areas that we're evaluating, whether we coexist on another tower, whether it's another agency across the river to feed back across, co-locate on a cell tower, but there's options out there that we're continuing to review through our process of this long-range plan. With this comes the band, the change. A lot of the radios out there for the end users are VHF only. So there's a decision that the end users have to make about converting their radios, whether they continue to have what they have and buy just a single band 800 radio, which is approximately about $4,000, mobile or portable roughly. If they were to buy a dual band radio that can do VHF, which currently exists and peripherally on the counties, on 2 of the counties around us, that's about an $8,000 per radio cost. But there are options that, like I've told several agencies that have reached out to me, is you don't have to buy a dual band radio if you don't need to. You can buy a single band 800 and live with 2 mobile radios in your vehicle. A portable, of course, probably a dual band is probably the most efficient. You don't want to have 2 portables hanging off their body. We did have a mini summit, if you will, with the surrounding counties in January. Pierce, Polk, and Dunn counties, my counterparts were there. We all discussed on the long-range plans that each of us have, the wants, the ask of our end users, and we're all in the same boat. We're growing population-wise. The activity, if you will, the calls for service, the increase is going up. The intensity of the calls, as you heard from Sheriff Knutson, they continue to get more and more. You've heard judges discussing the complexity of the types of court cases they're dealing with. So everything continues to grow. So with the KIP items for the 2027 area, there's going to be an ask for $2.2 million as well for mobiles and portables for the sheriff's office. So there's 2 KIP items. The 2 KIP items that we originally had for the tower and the enhancement or the refresh of the system, we combined them and made just one for the 11.6. So we kind of refreshed it, if you will. And there will be, if our ask are approved by you, the highway department will need to replace some radios. I've included them cost in that 11.6 as well. I've been discussing with Robbie and sharing with him, so he's fully aware, and we'll continue that open discussion with him about that. We have began to let the end users know. 2 weeks ago, we met with all the law enforcement chiefs, discussed where we're at, and discuss and ask in the county board for where we are financially, but to also put that on their scope so they can start their planning should everything move forward, because they need time to adjust as well their financial radio backing and such with their municipalities. Next, in 2 weeks, I meet with the EMS people. We shared everything with them electronically, but I'm going to be face-to-face in a meeting. Again, I've invited them to, if they got questions, and a few have asked. In the fire discipline, I have an additional meeting in May as well with them. So we're trying to stay out front of it, making sure they're aware of where we are, what our plans are, and to hopefully quill any rumors that are out there so we're all on the same page as to what the plan is for the future for all of us. Questions?
Go ahead.
How far back did we do something similar in terms of this, jump in equipment upgrade?
So the last time we had the big was the 2017 when we went live. So it was 2016, 2015, and that process actually began in 2012, the planning for that. And all the I shouldn't say all of, but 800 megahertz was looked at, a trunking system. The cost of it back then was so great, and we found we had to add towers where we currently were. And Supervisor Ramberg can remember back in his previous life, him and I discussing about the system back then and trying to meet his ask as well back in his former position as well. So Back then, that was the last forklift upgrade for that. And I'll add as well that 11.6 does include new dispatch radio consoles, all 12 positions, the 8 in Hudson and 4 in Baldwin as well. So they're enhanced for the encryption part and the 800, because they're coming due anyway around 2031. So I'm trying to bundle everything to get the county to where they need to be for around that 2030 timeline, but also try to position so with the population growth and the call growth as well for the calls for service, that we can expand the system and try to meet all the ask or wants of the end users.
All right. And then in terms of towers, is there any possibility of using any water towers and kind of, you know, putting our antenna up on water towers or high buildings? I know there's not a whole lot here in St. Croix County, but I was wondering.
So currently, we exist on 3 water towers in the county at municipalities, Hudson, New Richmond, and Woodville. And I'll be honest with you, like our consultant says, the water tanks are the worst antenna structures there are. They rust. And every 10, 15 years, the municipality has to strip everything off, sandblast, and repaint. Currently, the last one in Hudson was a cost of $150,000 for us to strip everything, temporary pole, to put up in the meantime while they're doing the repainting, and then put everything back on the water tank. I'm not saying no, but there is a cost when you do that as well. But that has been looked, that's constant. There's one in Roberts that we looked at, and after discussing with the village and their company that manages their water tank, we decided not to be on that water tank for certain reasons. So that's why we had to build a monopole in Roberts at that time in 2016. We built that.
All right, well, I think that makes sense. You know, you build your own, you don't have to worry about other people having to do whatever to maintain what you're sitting on, so,
Yeah.
okay.
And just to add as well, currently at Baldwin, the tower at the Egg Center was built with a partnership with Dairyland Electric. So we have a partnership with them, and we use that to link into the Pierce County paging system to share their paging channel with them. So there's a gateway there. And with working with St. Croix Electric initially here, everything's sounding good, but that'd be an additional partnership with them as well.
And then, I think this is my last question. The 911 command center, is it going to be in the same room with new consoles, or are you getting a whole new room to put the new gear in?
No, it's a good question. So the dispatch radio consoles is a PC. It's a PC linked with equipment back in our equipment room. And we have a redundant system as well that it's at Baldwin, so server A, server B, but both of them, it's a matter of just changing out a PC, but there's the connectivity and the hardware, if you will, in the back equipment room that would have to be changed.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As far as cost sharing or grants, I know of 2, but they're delayed. You know, you have to spend it first, and then you can, depending on how you book it, you can get costs. Is there any out there that the state has?
There are some grants state-wise, and we're already trying to use them to enhance our current, there's several KIP items that we have for our interoperability that we are using. There's a 911 grant that we're using currently on enhancing our 911 telephone system this year, but they came out with a second one for this year, and there's some ancillary items. They've really tightened their belt at any dispatch console. There's some furnitures that came out after we had already locked in our remodel situation, but for radio-wise, they are not an option. But we are looking at any of the additional fundings and grants that are out there, and Natasha in Emergency Management's looking at as well for any of them grants for radios. One thing I will add, because it's come up several times, is the weather sirens. The paging system, we are not changing that one specific channel, because that would require all the end users to buy additional pagers, brand new pagers, because there's 534 of them according to their survey results. We're not changing that, because that'd be an additional cost there, but the weather sirens as well would all have to be retooled in the county, because we'd be leaving that. So we're leaving that all as is, just refreshing that system when the time comes. And as well, during our RFP, should we proceed with the new infrastructure? Part of the RFP that'll be pushed out would be to include a ask of that vendor for a discount for radios, mobiles and portables. We've learned that if you ask with a large number of radios, that they will bid and give you a reduced rate. So we're trying to make sure these end users, the municipalities, are aware of that.
So if this is approved in the KIP, how long does it take to implement all of it?
So it'll take 27, 28, and 29. The year 29 is kind of a hinge point, because if approved, we have to build the Hammond Tower and try to make everything happen before Christmas of 2029, because we have to vacate the Hammond Tower at the old highway shop, and we have to remove all of our equipment prior to that, that's on that tower.
I'm assuming we'll discuss this more at another committee of the whole, or whenever we get into the talking about KIPs. I wish I had the power to do that.
No, I just want to maybe paint the bigger picture than what we're looking at. And what do you need, 11 or 12 million on that check?
11.6.
11.6? That includes the radios?
And
It does-
2.2, so
and
it's 13,
2.2.
it's almost 14.
It's almost 14.
Okay, all right. So 14 million is what we need. So 2027, the other big project on the 2027 KIP is the jail expansion. So I like it because I prefer to do one bond issue rather than multiple, because a bond issue has cost. But you're looking at the jail plus 14 million now in a bond issue. So you're looking at a very large bond issue, probably in the neighborhood of 70 million. So timing-wise, when you'd be voting on that, so we're going to go through and approve a KIP, but that doesn't really do anything in 2025 here for a 27 project. But December of 2026, just like we did last December, you would have to approve the initial bonding authorization resolution with a 3/4 vote of the county board. And that'll be a new county board in December of 26, because elections would have been 6 months before that. So hopefully you all get reelected, so I don't have to re-educate everybody. But that's timing-wise, and the scope of the overall bond issue are going to be the big discussion points. So that's what we want you to keep in mind, and we want you to start prepping you for that. But understand the importance of this. At some point, just like we were talking about with interpreter services, you can't do nothing. I mean, the tower in Hammond, you have to do something. So you're going to do something because you have to. So it's just really the size of the project and timing of the project. But that's what we're trying to educate you on.
Thank you for all the work you've put into this and the collaboration with all the partners and everything. This is wonderful to help us get a good assessment of what we really need. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Terry before he vacates? Okay. Request for future agenda items? I know one we'll need to eventually do, but with Chair Fiedler not here, we should probably talk about the jail inspection at some point. But that can come up later. Any announcements? I know, Sheriff, you probably have a couple with the ceremony on Monday.
Yeah, we'll be having our memorial dedication ceremony on Monday. It'll be at 3 o'clock. And we'll be recognizing the 4 that will be placed on the wall. Almost completed down there, with kind of the final touches coming in this weekend, so the weather looks good. There will be representatives from each family. Some of them, such as the Harry Harris family, 125 years later, that we're not aware because of the lineage. So I it's going to be a very fulfilling day. So, thank you.
Any other announcements from anyone?
Just at the next meeting, the public protection meeting, the new courtrooms will be open. So they're going to be opening up in a couple of weeks. They're going to make the move down there. And if you had time after this meeting, I'd be happy to walk you over and you can see what they look like with just a couple touches left to go.
That'd be great. With that, then our next meeting is June 5th. And seeing no other announcements, call the meeting adjourned at 8:40.